Today, we are going to study about the incentive pay. So what does it mean? It means that we will look at the pay system. Okay, there are different ways to pay the workers, for employers to pay employees. So we will interpret those pay system in terms of giving an incentive to the employees. So what do we mean by incentives? Okay, so there is an incentive problem in employer and employee relationship. It's simple. The simple problem is that employer wants their employees to work hard, okay, to make money for them. Employees basically not that interested in making money for their employers. What they're interested in is primarily their own interest. Okay, how much they are paid, okay, and how hard or how difficult this job is. Obviously, if the pay is the same, the workers will prefer to work in easier jobs, right? Let's say the pays are the same. Everything else equal. Nobody wants to work harder than necessary. Okay, so that's a problem. Okay, that's the incentive problem. So employer wants their employees to exert as much effort as possible on the job. So they want them to work really hard. But employees incur this utility from these hard working. Okay, obviously they don't like it, right? So nobody wants to exhaust themselves for their own employers, right? Without any additional incentive. So, and then obviously the problem, these incentives are not compatible with each other. Okay, their incentives are different. On top of that, employees' efforts cannot be observed perfectly by the employers. Okay, there are some cases that may be possible. Let's say if you have a very small shop, you hire only one person working for you. Okay, you stay with this employee for the whole hours that you are in the office. Probably then, it's easier to observe your employees and find out whether this guy is working really hard or just shirking. Okay, shirk, you need to know the word shirk for this lecture. Shirk just means be lazy, okay? Avoid hard working. Basically, that's what shirk means. So whether these employees are shirking or not, it's easier. Let's say you have only one employee and then you stay with him or her for the whole time. But in most cases, you hire multiple employees. Okay? Sometimes the companies hire tens of thousands of employees. Okay? Then obviously, watching them is not a solution. Okay? So the employer needs a way to give incentives to the employees to work hard. You cannot just force them to work hard. In a way, you have to devise a system to give those employees voluntarily to work hard. They work hard because they want to do it, okay? Not because they're forced to do it. Okay? Obviously, if you're forcing them, it can cause a legal trouble, right? You cannot, you cannot have this kind of, in this modern society, they are not slaves. You cannot force them to work hard, okay? So this is an incentive problem we talked about. So we need a solution from the employer's point of view. And then what are the solutions that we are going to look at today? Okay? And then you can understand some of the pay system, I think from different point of view. Probably you didn't think about it yesterday. Now, if you learned how this incentive system works, then you will figure out that, wow, that's why this system actually exists. Okay? So the employer basically design a payment scheme that provides the employees an incentive to exert as much effort as possible without a constant supervision. Okay, if you try to supervise them constantly, it can if you think about them, the cost can be, astronomical. If you have tens of thousands of workers, how do you watch them every hour? It's basically impossible. Probably you install a CCTV everywhere. That's probably not legally, acceptable thing to do. Or you hire, lots of supervisors. Obviously, that costs you extra money. Plus, who will supervise the supervisors? Okay, that's another issue. You have to supervise supervisors. Okay, so these supervisors, if they are left alone, they would not supervise that hard, because it causes disutility to them also. Okay? So obviously, if you think about it, watching them is not a solution. So you need to get a solution without the need to supervise them constantly. Okay, so we will look at the systems from this point of view. First thing, it's a very easy thing. You can design the pay in a way that provides the incentive to the employees to work hard voluntarily. One way of doing it is to pay them according to their output. It's simple, right? So if they produced a lot, you pay them more. If they produced small amount, you pay them less. Okay? So if you think about it, first thing, if they don't work hard, you don't lose much because you don't pay them much, right? And since they know that if they work hard and then they produce a lot, then they will be paid more. So workers, to the extent that they are capable, they will try to work hard as possible. Okay, if the reward is good enough. Okay? So we just compare these two systems of paying. One is called the piece rate. The other one is called, let's say, time rate. Piece rate, as the name shows, it's a wage rate by piece. How many pieces you made? So per piece, let's say I pay you $10 per piece. So if you made 10 pieces, I pay you $100. Time rate is based on time. So how long you have stayed in this office, how long you have worked. Okay, that's a time rate. So usually the time rate is, so for example, like a per hour rate. Per hour I pay you $10. So if you work for 10 hours, I'll pay you $100. We don't count the number of pieces you made, just the number of hours. Or you can think of like a monthly pay, weekly pay, bi-weekly pay. All those things are actually time rate, right? So like if you're on a monthly payment basis, okay, they don't count how many pieces you made in this 1 month period. You show up every day, and then you stayed from the beginning to the end every day, and not every day, I mean work days, and then you do it for a month, you should get paid. That's time rate. Okay? So piece rate pay, okay, it's the really easy system. So the worker is paid according to the value of his or her marginal product. Okay? So what happens is that you think about like a piece rate. R is a piece rate, let's say $10 per piece. And then this is, you can think of it as a marginal revenue from workers' point of view. Okay? If you make one more thing, you will get R dollars. So that's the marginal revenue from workers' point of view. So the horizontal axis is units about how many pieces you make. Okay? So this is a marginal revenue from the worker's point of view. Then there is obviously a marginal cost. Okay? So what is the marginal cost? Basically, if you make more and more, then to making one additional piece will incur disutility to you. You get tired. Okay? So at first, the marginal cost of making one more probably is relatively low. You start fresh. But as you make more and more pieces, you get tired and tired. Okay? Or your equipment gets worse and worse, whatever. So marginal cost is likely to be increasing Okay? So what is the optimal choice? I mean, so even if it's a piece rate, nobody makes the infinite number of pieces, right? Okay, why? Because they have to stop at some point. Comparing marginal revenue and marginal cost. So as long as the marginal revenue is higher than the marginal cost, this individual will make more pieces. But if the marginal cost exceeds marginal revenue, it's time to stop. Okay, so for one day, this is enough. Okay? So that's let's say at this point. Okay? So under the piece rate system, each person basically chooses their own number of pieces to make, optimal number of pieces they make. Nobody forces them to make, certain number of pieces. But actually, there is a way of making them, they can design a system in a way that to make like additional incentive to make them certain number. For example, they can say that if you make, let's say, 100 pieces, we will give you a bonus or something. But that's like additional thing. Okay. So piece rate, in a pure sense, is just a per piece pay. So that's how the workers will determine their own effort. Okay, so workers will determine their own optimal level of effort. Now, where can we use the piece rate? Okay, obviously the assumption of piece rate is that you should be able to count the numbers, count the pieces. Okay? If you cannot count them, you cannot pay them by piece rate. So piece rate is usually used in firms where the individual outputs are easily measured. Okay. So usually it's basically the simple manufacturing industry uses piece rate system a lot. For example, how many T-shirts you have made today? Okay. How many shoes you have made today? Whatever. How many bags or how many envelopes you have made today? I have seen a TV show that shows the making envelopes at home. Okay? It's easy. Okay? Count the number of envelopes this person made. So per envelope you pay, let's say, 50 cents or something. Okay? Then they get paid by the number of envelopes they make. So it is usually obviously the individual outputs. So individuals are paid by piece rate. So you should know that how many pieces that each person has made. So given that, I just showed this. Okay. One thing is that piece rate, under the piece rate, the ability of the individual worker will affect how many pieces they make and how much they are paid. For example, you compare these two people. So this is a person, this is very able person, 달인. Okay. So you can make much lower cost than the other person. Okay? So this person finds this job really easier compared to the other person. Okay? So this person's marginal cost, if you think about it, it's lower than the other person. So since their marginal cost is lower, their outputs will be greater. Okay? So you can see here is that if you're of high ability, you are likely to prefer to have piece rate system, right? Because you compare to lower ability, you will make much more money. Right? Okay, so this is how we can think about it. Let's say this is ability level. So horizontal axis is the ability level. Okay. And this is the axis of utility. Okay, what does it mean? If you're on a time rate, it doesn't matter what level of ability you have. 1 hour is 1 hour. 1 day is 1 day. So everyone will be paid for the same rate if you're on the time rate. Okay? But if you're on a piece rate, as you have seen in the previous diagram, basically, ability is higher, piece rate workers pays higher. This is because they make more pieces. Okay? So if you're a worker A, which has relatively low ability, prefers time rate. Right? Higher ability prefers piece rate. Okay? So if you watch TV, this starting thing, okay? These piece rate workers are generally very efficient and work really fast. Why? If you cannot do it, you shouldn't be there. You should go somewhere else and find something else, right? So at the end, these people are just a selected group of people, right? So obviously. Okay, so piece rate is a simple, and it seems to be really intuitive, okay? Because you don't have to worry about how to motivate them. Motivation is just there because you make more money, okay? So you don't have to worry about how to, how to encourage them to work harder, okay? But there are, if you think about them, why don't everybody pay piece rate? Because there are bunch of problems associated with piece rate. First thing is individual output, okay, that is probably the really like a simple task, making envelopes and making t-shirts. Probably it's important, but in modern economy, most of products are made by teams, right? It's not just individual. So team efforts and team output is maybe more important than individual output. Okay? And it's so since the modern manufacturing industry example, like they use the team, okay, not just individual. So piece rate system is not suitable for this problem, for this type of industry. And quality problems and equipment misuse. It means that basically this payment is based on the number of pieces you made. So the faster you make things, the more you are going to be paid. So what's important here is the number of pieces, not the quality. Quality is of second importance. Okay? So it can be problems. If you make a cheap T-shirt that can be sold like for, I don't know, for let's say $10 a piece, probably piece rate T-shirt is not a problem. You make it cheap, and then the customers do not expect them to be of really high quality. If it's a lower quality, they will just accept it because it's cheap. But let's say you are going to sell a T-shirt that should sell for $100 a piece, okay? Then customers will pay really attention to the quality of the T-shirts they buy. Okay? So if you use, for example, piece rate system, okay, that can lower the quality of your outputs. I'm not saying that piece rate cannot solve this problem. Obviously, you can adjust, how the piece rate works. Let's say you can give a bonus for the higher quality, or you can, to control those things. But still, okay. So inherently, the quality will be a second priority in this piece rate. And equipment misuse, obviously, they want to work fast, so they may misuse their equipment. Okay. So the optimal use for this equipment is, let's say, 100 pieces per hour, but sometimes people probably will work faster, so they just misuse the equipment. Then that can shorten the life of the equipment. If the equipment is expensive, then that's gonna be a problem. Right? So usually in the piece rate system, actually, generally it's a simple manufacturing industry, and these workers generally use their own tools. Right? So they can avoid this problem. Okay, and then another thing is this. Piece rate is paid by piece, so if you do not work much, you will not paid much. And sometimes people will get sick, right? Sometimes they have things to do, right? You cannot avoid those things, for example. Let's say you get sick, you get MERS, and then or you are suspected of having MERS, so you are quarantined. You cannot work for 10 days. For a month, you will not be paid, right? So the piece rate system is inherently risky from employees' point of view, from workers' point of view. one time you can make enough money, but some days you will have probably very little money. You get sick or something else happens, some emergency happens. So if everything else is equal, okay, if everything else, let's say if the average pays are the same, piece rate and time rate, then people will prefer, generally, people are risk averse, they will prefer time rate, right? You think of average, okay? If it's a piece rate, I have average, let's say $1,000 a month. Time rate, $1,000 a month, but this is not risky. You're surely paid $1,000 a month. Then risk-averse person will choose to have time rate. Okay? So it means that you have to attract people to work for piece rate. You have to provide an incentive. You have to provide additional incentive for them to work under piece rate. That means piece rate in general, their average pay should be higher. Okay? So let's say there must be a risk premium for the piece rate to work. Okay? So that's the thing that we are talking about. So if they are equally productive, on average, piece rate workers are paid more. Okay? And part of it is the risk premium. It's a compensation for the risk. And there is a thing called ratchet effect. What is a ratchet effect? Ratchet effect is ratchet. I have to draw a thing. Ratchet is like a, you know, in a machine you have, right? You have this thing that goes, that works only one direction. Okay, so and then you have like this, and you know, then they work together. Okay, and then it cannot go the other way. It should go around only one way. Okay, that's ratchet. So this thing is called ratchet. So what is ratchet effect? Ratchet effect is actually ratchet effect is used in many different economics subfield. So you will hear ratchet effect not only here, but it's somewhere else. Okay, there are ratchet effects thing, you know, in a few places. But in this particular example, the ratchet effect is this. You get a piece rate, let's say $10 a piece. Okay, and you work really hard. Okay, so you make, let's say, more money than you expect. Okay, let's say the employer expects their employees to work, let's say, make 100 piece per month. Let's say. So they pay $10 a piece. So $1,000 is their expected pay. Okay, but let's say the workers really work really hard because they are very motivated. So they make more than 100 pieces. So they make less than 20% more. Okay. And what can happen is that the employer think that, wow, this job must be easy, right? So I expect them to make only 100 pieces, but they just make 120. That means probably this job is easier than I think. You know, the employers are not very certain how easy this job is because they do not know their own thing, right? The workers do the things. So they have to watch them and then kind of, so there must be an optimal piece rate. You cannot pay them too much. You cannot pay them too little. If you pay them too little, they will not work hard. If you pay them too much, probably you are losing your money, right? So they always look for the optimal rate. But let's say the workers do work hard and then they make more, then what employers think? I should lower the rate, right? So 120 piece, they can make 120, so I pay them probably $9 a piece. Probably that's the right amount, not the 10. So they pay $9 a piece, let's say, for example. Okay. Now the workers look at it and they make not much money, right? So even though they make 120, their payment didn't change much. Their total, compensation. So they probably work even harder to make more money. Now then what happens? the piece rate now goes down even further. Because now they can make 130, not 9, not 120, so I have to pay them 850, right? So that's what ratchet effect means. So ratchet effect means that this is possible that this rate just goes one direction, lower direction. Okay? So workers work hard, that actually works against them, the workers themselves. Okay? So employers may consider high levels of output as the jobs being easy and lower the rate. So even though they work really hard, it will not change their situation much. So what can workers think? Okay, workers probably will counteract. How? They probably put less effort. Okay? So they just work slowly. Okay? So they expect them 100 piece, they make only 90. And tell them that, tell the employer it's just too difficult. We cannot make 100 pieces. So then employers probably will have an incentive to raise the rate now. Okay? So that kind of interaction can happen. That can be quite counterproductive. Okay? It's just a game played between employer and employees. It can be counterproductive. So just to use a piece rate system to make them work really hard, but getting the optimal rate can be quite difficult. So, as I said, in the modern economy, piece rate is relatively a rare thing. You will see it only in limited, occupations. So, but one variation of piece rate is to give like a team incentives. As I said, in the modern economy, team effort is more important. So what can they do is one variation is that we do not pay them individual output. We just look at their team output, and then we pay them by their team output. Okay? So we reward the team, we reward the group, not the individual. So it seems to be more easier to implement. Okay? And it probably, it's more fitting to the modern economy. So team incentives like a team bonus, we have, actually these team incentives are very, very common. Like, for example, like the year end, and then in lots of companies, their workers are interested in their team bonus. It's in almost every company. Okay. So usually, the team members are equally rewarded, right? According to the team's performance. They look at the whole team's performance, and they pay them equally. Okay. Obviously, this is a, so this kind of thing, or profit sharing, or bonus, right? So it's like a firm's overall performance. So it's a little bigger thing, like not by team, but by whole firm. Okay, so our company make, let's say, much more profit than the previous year. And this profit can be, some of the profit we share with our employees. So every employee will get a bonus. Like when the Samsung Electronics was doing really well, like a couple of years ago or something, they get really large bonus at the end of the year, right? That has been a news everywhere. Okay, they get like a few months of salary at the end of the year. Okay? That kind of thing is a profit sharing, or just a bonus, a special bonus for their employees. So that also is, in a way, it's a variation of team incentive. If you expect this type of output, if you expect this type of reward, then probably the whole employees work really hard to make this firm more profitable, so that they can make more money. Not because they love the company, but because they love the money, right? Okay? The Samsung Electronics, they make a lot more money. We are happy for them. But employees obviously will be much happier if they get the bonus out of it. So they work really hard voluntarily for their whole firm, not for their own individual, because individual performance will not be rewarded, but the team performance, the company, whole firm performance. Okay? So that could be a solution. And also it's actually used, to provide incentive for their employees to work really hard. You have to think about why do they pay those large bonus. They are not charity, right? They love their employees, but I suspect. Okay. What they do is that basically it's an incentive system. Okay, this bonus and whole thing is just an incentive system. Okay, so but the problem is, obviously the free riders a problem. Okay, so we don't have to talk about it in detail. It's obvious. The team incentives may encourage workers to be more productive, but the free riders will be there. So, if they use a team incentive, they have to figure out those free riders. Okay, now, so we talked about how the employees are paid. Okay, so what basis the employees are paid? That's one way of solving the solving the incentive problem. Another way of solving the incentive problem is to use so-called promotion tournaments. What is the promotion tournaments? Okay, the way of looking at it is you think when you get a job, let's say, after you graduate, let's say you get a job in a large companies usually. In a large company, when you get a job, not only you start your career, but also you start participating in a tournament. What kind of tournament? This tournament has winners and losers. Okay? The result will be announced every a few years in terms of the promotion, whether you get the next promotion or not. Okay? But you are entering the game, whether you know it or not. Okay? So, I think I have seen it on TV drama. There was a line that employees care about only two things. One is pay, the other promotion. Okay. So then they use promotion as an incentive to workers to work hard. It's simple. So, okay. So think of promotion. Why do they use this type of tournaments? Okay. No, this tournament is a thing that if they know really the individual's performance output, okay, actually probably you don't need this type of tournaments. You can reward them according to their productivity. But let's say you don't know their exact productivity. You cannot just quantify them. But let's say you know that who are better. It's much easier to know that who's better than to know who make how much money, who make how much money for the company. So it's sometimes difficult to measure the absolute difference. Okay, so you don't know how much, let's say their difference in productivity is, let's say, is $1 million a year. We cannot know that whether it's $1 million a year difference or not. But it is often easier to know the rankings. Okay? So these rankings are used to determine who's going to be promoted or not. Okay? So promotion tournament is a winning or losing. Okay? So rankings determine this, okay? Not the absolute performance. Okay? So it is possible that this employee and that employee are pretty much very similar. Okay? Their productivity difference is probably very small. Okay? But there is only one position. Then who will get it? I mean, if they can give the positions to both of them, it can be possible, but usually they pick only one person, only one winner, even though their difference may be very, very small. Okay? Sometimes it can be actually wrong. You probably promote a person of relatively a little lower productivity. Okay? Sometimes that happens. But promotion tournaments, the whole idea is, if you are good at picking the winners, then you can provide very good incentives to their employees. So we will talk about it a little more detail. Okay, so for the promotion tournaments to work, there are certain conditions. First thing is the uncertainty of winning. So you should not be able to know in advance who's going to win, right? If the winners are obvious, nobody will work hard. Winners, they're going to win, so they will work hard. They will not work hard. Losers, they know that they're going to lose. Okay, what's the use for working really hard? So at first, you should not know who's going to win this thing. Okay? It's like think of like a sports game. Okay? And there should be a substantial rewards for winner. Why do you want to be a winner? There must be a reward, big reward for it. If the reward is big, then you will work even harder. Right? If the reward is relatively small, then people will not work as hard as possible. Okay? So there must be a substantial rewards for winner. So with the promotion, okay, you get, basically, it usually means that your pay will be higher. Okay? So your pay will be higher, then you will have more perks, okay? Like you probably get a company car with a driver, those kind of things, right? A bigger office, right? And your own secretary, those kind of things. All those things you can think of it as a compensation package. So compensation package should be, noticeably different from losers. Okay? More pay, better office, like all those kind of things. Like you probably get a free golf membership or something. You get a free cars and all those things. If you read about these executives, compensation for the executives in large companies, you will find all these type of perks. Okay, that is also a part of the reward. Okay, so if these two things are provided, then individuals will work really hard, right? So everyone knows that, everyone thinks that they can be a winner. Okay, and then if I win this thing, I will get much, much higher, okay, compensation than I currently have. Okay, then people will work really hard. Okay. At the end, however, the winner may be determined by a random factor. It is possible that these two people are just equal productivity, but one person got a better luck, let's say. Okay, it is quite possible. And this luck may determine the winner at the end. Okay. And the absolute difference in actual performances may be very small. But actually, it doesn't matter. What it matters is the possibility of winning this thing will make their employees to work really hard. Okay? So deciding the winner is important, but it is not as important as giving incentives to the whole employees. Okay? You get this job. You know that, okay, I can get to the top, let's say. I can be a CEO someday. Everybody thinks, let's say. They work really hard to be the CEO, right? So at the end, probably at the end, the CEO, wrong person is picked, get to be the CEO. But the incentive of, this possibility of being a CEO itself is an enough thing for the companies to make workers to work really hard. Okay, that's the idea of promotion tournament. So this promotion tournament can be brutal. Okay, so at first it's generally easier to be promoted, but it gets more and more difficult. Yeah, and then this pyramid, right, gets smaller and smaller. So at the end, there is only one person, okay, the CEO, right? And the CEO gets really, really huge reward. Okay? Why? Because obviously that if the reward is low, this is the effort level, the marginal cost of effort. If you put more effort, it gets more difficult. So if the marginal revenue is low, let's say the reward is not very big, then people will put low effort. If the reward is high enough, okay, then people will put higher effort. Okay? So even if it seems like the CEO is paid too much, let's say, why do we have to pay that much money to CEO? And then it seems like some type of waste to the company, but actually it is not the waste. because this big reward motivate their whole group of employees to work hard. So that's the real reward. That's the real benefit to the company. Okay? So it's not the waste. And if you see their CEO gets just a little more than what we usually get, and people will probably think, oh, okay, why should we bother to work really hard to be the CEO? I'm satisfied. Okay, if that's the case, then then the whole company will not be very productive or profitable. So that's rewarding them with a big bonus, a big compensation package is, in a way, it's an optimal thing to do. So promotion tournament is used in large companies. There are problems. One is that collusions, right, can possible. So if at the end the participants, let's say the number of people gets smaller and smaller at the top level, okay, you probably have only 2 or 3 candidates for the next level. Then it is possible there may be a collusion. Okay, collusion is that they just get together and that they decide the output by themselves. Okay? And then can be counterproductive. Sabotage is a way of one way of winning it is probably you work hard, or harming the other person's work is a way of winning it, right? Because it's relative ranking. So the sabotage is possible that you probably do something to the other person's work, and then try to make a sabotage. So that can be counterproductive. This thing do happen, yeah. Even though it's not known to outsiders, but these things do happen, okay, at the top level. And if the price spread increases, obviously these problems can happen, right? Because if the reward is small, they wouldn't bother to sabotage all those things. But if the reward is really big, then these problems can happen. Okay, so the promotion tournaments is often used, but there are certain problems I talked about. Okay, the third way of motivating the workers is quite a simple system. Change when they are paid. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's think about it. Okay, so this is the horizontal axis is the age, or you can think of it as actually a tenure on the job. How long you have had this job. Okay. And let's say for this individual, there is no change in productivity. Let's say, to make things simple, MRPL is flat. But actually, it doesn't matter whether its MRPL is increasing. Okay? But to make things simple, just MRPL, let's say it's flat. Okay? So if everyone is paid by their own productivity, they will be paid basically the same amount every year. Okay? But instead of paying it that way, let's think of paying it in this way, this orange way. How do we do it? The employer pays their employees less than their MRPL at first. And at some point, they pay them actually more than their MRPL. So as you can see, this is basically a seniority-based wage system. If you become more and more senior, your pay will get higher and higher. Okay. Why does seniority increase wage? Actually, there are explanations. One is, for example, like the best known explanation is the human capital. Right? So if you accumulate more specific human capital, then people get more productive. So that's why they are paid more. But there is actually a second explanation. Okay, alternative explanation is this. Okay, this one gives the employees to work hard. How? If you're a young worker, you know that you are paid less than your actual worth. But you know that if you stay with this company for, let's say, more than T-star years, you will start getting more than what you are worth. Okay? From company's point of view, if this triangle is the same as this triangle, okay, for them, actually, it's indifferent. Whether they pay them by the MRPL or they pay them less first, pay them later, pay them higher later, okay, as long as this whole area is the same, it doesn't matter from company's point of view. But it matters to employees because at first you will pay less, but you know that you will pay more later. So you have to be in this company, okay, as long as you can. Right? Let's say you get a job here and then you are fired. Let's say at this point, basically what you're doing is that you basically lost. Okay, you didn't get any reward. So under this system, workers will work hard to keep this job. Okay, so that's the way of looking at it. So workers are paid below MRPL while young and above MRPL while old, and workers lose overpayment, okay, if they are caught of shirking. So the understanding here is that if the worker shirks, okay, the employer will fire this guy. Okay? So it's not 100%, but there is a probability of getting caught of shirking. So and then if they are fired, they will lose this overpayment. So they have to minimize, the employees have to minimize the possibility of losing the overpayment. So a way of doing it is not to shirk. Okay? So that's, it's a simple way of paying it, but it's a nice system to give the employees to work hard, okay? Especially for young ones. So the implications are that high motivation while young workers will be highly motivated to keep this job. Okay? So there will be less shirking. Okay? So delayed compensation contract is more likely to be used where monitoring is difficult. In large firms, for example. Okay? The monitoring is that finding out who's working hard or who's shirking. Okay? If it is difficult, okay, then you need a system to make them work really hard. One way of doing it is to pay by seniority. Okay? So this delayed compensation contract. So in large firms, so monitoring is difficult, so they are more likely to be used to delay the compensation. And wages increase with the seniority within a job. Okay? Not because they become more productive, but because this seniority-based pay provides incentive to their employees to work hard. And then long-term relationship between the employer and employee should exist. Okay? For this for this delayed compensation system to work, the assumption is if employees work hard as expected, they should be able to get back those lost payment. Okay? If employer do not honor this type of contract, let's say the employer fires them as soon as these employees get older, let's say they start getting overpayment, they fire them. Okay? If it is the way, then this system will not work. Nobody will accept this system. So the both parties should have understanding that there must be a long-term relationship as far as the employees do not shirk. Okay? So this long-term relationship will exist under this system. Okay? And from employees' point of view, it's simple. Employees do not want to quit this job. Right? So this long-term relationship will exist. Okay. Well, another thing about this long-term relationship is that there must be an end to this relationship. You cannot have this relationship indefinitely. Why? Because, think about it. Let's say the company uses this system, this delayed compensation system. Okay, one thing is that delayed compensation doesn't have to be like this continuous increase with seniority. Delayed compensation can be a different thing, like something like you can have like this type of, for example, delayed compensation system. Okay, so the thing is that if you reach, let's say when you reach a certain age, let's say retirement, you get very big bonus when you retire, for example. That's one way of using the delayed compensation. So you have to retire from this company to get this huge retirement bonus. That's another thing. So it doesn't have to be always like this. Okay. But anyway, if you think about this system, for this system to work, this whole payment and this whole product from the worker should be balanced. Okay? If one thing is smaller than the other, the system will not work much. So they should be balanced. Okay? From employer's point of view, for example, if you have to pay them indefinitely, okay, you cannot have this system because overpayment will soon exist, the underpayment. So to balance them out, the system should know when it ends. Okay? So it ends, let's say, after 30 years or something. Okay? So this is the end. This is often called mandatory retirement. Okay? So if you reach, let's say, age 55 at this company, you should leave. Okay? So if they know the end, okay, then they can design the system to work this way. Okay? So if this end is not 55, let's say 60, and this line should become flatter, for example. Okay? So depending on when the retirement age is, the system will work differently. Okay? It will look different. So the need to know the end is the way of explaining why there is mandatory retirement. Because mandatory retirement seems to be a really absurd thing. Why? Think about it. Let's say 60 is a mandatory retirement age. You are 59 years and 364 days old. You are productive member of this company. One day later, you become obsolete and you should leave. How can you explain it? Just one day makes such a big difference, right? One day ago, the company will willingly, hire you and then let you work. But one day later, you are too old to work. How do you explain this, sudden change of employment relationship? So the thing is, okay, let's think about it. The thing is, they need to have a mandatory retirement age at the beginning of the contract. Why? If they set the retirement age as they go on, the workers, first, if you're old enough, you will get overpayment. You are getting more than what you're worth. You have no incentive to quit. Why? Why do you want to quit? You are getting much more than what you are actually doing. Okay, so nobody wants to quit at that age. So in the contract, at the signing of the contract, while you are young, the mandatory retirement age should be set while you are young, when you sign the contract. So you cannot change the retirement age later. Okay. So usually the mandatory retirement age is known when you enter the company. Okay. So I just talked about employers lose if workers stay with the company too long. So mandatory retirement age is a prerequisite for the delayed compensation scheme. So mandatory retirement age should exist for the delayed compensation scheme to work. Okay, so at the time of entering the contract, from workers' point of view, mandatory retirement age looks okay. Even though when you get old, it looks different, but while you are young, okay, you know the whole contract level, the whole compensation level, that it seems to be fine at first. Okay. Now, there's one thing about mandatory retirement age is, in some situations, mandatory retirement age is actually illegal. Why? Actually, for example, including Korea, most countries have the law against discriminatory practices. Okay? If you discriminate against women, if you discriminate against, let's say, different race, okay, the company can get sued. Okay? Or even that they can get jailed, some people, for the discriminatory practices. So there are list of discriminatory practices that are banned in the labor market, including Korea actually. And most countries have like the employers cannot commit the discrimination against, let's say, discrimination by gender, by race, and blah blah blah. And usually discrimination by age is banned. Okay? You cannot treat differently only because their ages are different. Okay? So that's the usual thing. Now, the thing called mandatory retirement, if you interpret it in one way, is actually an age discrimination. Right? You are 59, you are perfectly fine. You are 60, you cannot work here. So it looks like age discrimination. Right? So everything is equal. You're just old. You cannot work. So in some countries, mandatory retirement is illegal. Okay. But actually in many countries, including European countries, mandatory retirement is an exception for age discrimination. Okay. So it is accepted as an exception to age discrimination, because this whole payment system depends on mandatory retirement. But for example, in the US, the mandatory retirement was abolished. I think it was in 1980s. Okay. So they cannot have mandatory retirement age. So in the US, especially in academia, in universities, professors in Korea should retire at age 65. Okay, so there is a mandatory retirement age. In the US, there is no mandatory retirement age. Professors can work as long as they live, actually. If you have a 10-year contract, okay, 10-year contract basically means that the university cannot fire you except for certain, serious issues. Okay? But if you do not commit those things, you have a job as long as you are alive. Okay? Because mandatory retirement is illegal. So didn't I show you a picture of Gary Becker? And then Gary Becker, right, worked, right, until basically the last moments. Okay, he was like 70 or 80 something, okay? But he was still teaching, okay, and supervising the PhD students. Okay. So those things can happen. Now, if you think about it, then okay, that thing destroy this delayed compensation scheme. Okay, sometimes it happened, like they destroyed the delayed compensation scheme, but sometimes it can be used in a different way. How? They can actually the company can actually provide a special incentive to their employees if they reach a certain age. So let's say if they reach age 55, if you retire from our company, we will give you a special bonus. Or they can nowadays it's actually a little rarer, but some years ago, the companies have their own private pension plan. So it's like, so their employees retire, and then company, they have this pension fund, and then they pay the pension like every month to their retired employees. Okay? And then this type of scheme can be designed in a way that to give their employees to retire at specific age. So if you retire at age 55, your pension, expected pension for your whole lifetime is the greatest amount. Then a lot of employees have an incentive to quit at age 55. So it's not a mandatory retirement, but it's a way of giving them strong incentive to quit at a certain age. So that can work that way. But anyway, in Korea's case, a lot of companies, especially the big companies, do have mandatory retirement age, and this mandatory retirement age can work in a way to provide a basis for the delayed compensation scheme. Okay? So we covered the piece rate, team incentive, tournament pay, and tournament, the promotion tournament, and delayed compensation scheme. So, you know, what the employers do, this whole thing is based on the desire to make more profit. Okay, one way of making more profit is obviously to making their employees to incentive to work hard. So we talked about all those things. Last topic, incentives payment scheme is called the efficiency wage. What is it? Efficiency wage, so we talked about on what basis the workers are paid, piece rate, time rate, right? And how the pays are structured according to age. Right? That's the delayed compensation scheme. Last thing we talk about is the level of wage itself. Okay. So what is the efficiency wage? Okay, the basic idea of efficiency wage is workers' productivity seems to increase as the pays increase. You know, actually, the usual economic theory is the other way around. Okay? Productivity determines wage, not the other way. But efficiency wage thinking is that the other way. Wage determines productivity. Okay? How? A few things. One thing, if you pay them more than your competitors, people want to work for you, right? So if you have an opening, there will be lots of job applicants because you are paying more than the usual pay. So from the large pool of applicants, you can get better employees. That's the first thing. You can have higher quality employees. Okay? So in that way, the higher wages can increase the productivity of your employees. Second is that since these people are paid more than the average pay, more than what they can get elsewhere, these people have very low incentive to quit. Right? This is the best thing. So they have low quit rate, so they will accumulate more specific human capital. They will participate more in training, all those things. So it can increase the productivity. Third is less shirking on the job. Why? Obviously, if you shirk and you get caught, you get fired, your pay will be lower, even if you get a job elsewhere. Okay? So it provides incentive to shirk less, okay, to their employees. And last thing is a little bit of like a softer, but employees' perception of fairness. Basically, it means that they think that their boss is fair. They like their boss because they pay them more, right? So they will work hard because they like their company. Okay, I'm treated very well in this company. Okay, so all these things together has indication that productivity may increase as wages increase. Okay. So the idea of efficiency wage, okay, the last thing, okay, really last thing is actually this is a really old idea. So it's called nutrition efficiency wage. Actually, this is actually quite important. Okay, if you talk to people doing business in low-income countries, it's actually quite important. Thing is that the low-income countries, workers are not productive because they are not fed well. Okay? They are weak because they do not eat properly. Okay? They are underfed. You know? Underfeeding them will make them less productive. So to make them more productive, you have to give them more money so that they eat better, so they become stronger, they can get more productive. Okay? So that is actually quite true in low-income countries. It's quite a serious issue actually in low-income countries. The underfed workers, malnutrition among the employees can be really counterproductive. So if you pay your employees more than your competitors, your employees will eat better, will become more productive, so your company can get more profitable than the other company that pays less. Okay? It's called actually nutrition efficiency wage. There is a special name for this. So all these things can, indicate that wages do increase productivity. Okay, I think we should stop here. So we just discussed the basic idea of efficiency wage. We continue the next class.